wearing masks. She was on it right away and took a little bit of heat from our governor, from our state officials initially. But pretty quickly the governor got on board. But I think he was slow. We were slow to start testing in our state, and we have not, as of yet, established a tracing program. And I think those two pieces are critical to knowing how to deal with COVID. And I am frustrated that we didn't turn to the science and the data right away. You know, collecting data, knowledge is power. And collecting the data should have been one of the first things we put in place, you know, so the testing and then the tracing. And then, you know, I think everybody got on board and we started to see a little bit of a downturn, and then we opened too soon. We opened the state back up too soon. I think we needed to give it another 6 to 8 weeks, as painful as that is. And of course, the tension there is people's livelihoods. You know, as it was starting to get extremely hot in Arizona, people were losing their houses, you know, their homes. People lost their jobs. There wasn't the money to pay for the air conditioning, which is huge at this time. You know, a lot of people worry about utilities in the winter months when it's so cold. Well, in Arizona, it's the air conditioning in the summer months that is critical to keeping people comfortable and safe. You know, fortunately, we've had some strong legislatures really pushing for policies that would help. Tied to the COVID and the economy, we all of a sudden were faced with the fact that our unemployment insurance really was not enough for people to help people get by until they could find work again. And so that was also thrown into the mix of all of this uncertainty and anxiety. And you know, our legislature, we've had really incredible leaders fighting for working families and for the people in our state. Unfortunately, they are not in the majority. And so at the end of the day, it was hard to get anything done that would reflect any kind of help or aid on a long-term basis for the people of our state. So I think Arizona for a while there has really, it's been troubling to see how our state has handled this. I think we could do better for sure. And I have a sense that this is going to be one of the first things that gets addressed when the new session begins.
Very nice, I mean, way you put the things, especially with the COVID. I know COVID has created stress on both the health of the people and also the economy. Especially the small businesses, restaurants and the retail stores, I mean, are being affected very hard. And we are not sure, I mean, when it is going to recover, and then when I'm sure they will recover one day, but I mean, why they need to survive till that point. That is a challenge right now, and hope, I mean, the lawmakers and the economy, I mean, the environment will will help the people, and the businesses will recover soon. Let us hope for that. And during the same time, I mean, we had another social issue, which is like started in Minneapolis, the Black Lives Matter movement. So how is it in your area, and what are your views on the Black Lives Matter, and which also attracts the criminal justice reforms too? So you can talk about either you want to talk separately or you want to mix it. It's your choice.
It is interesting because, yes, and certainly another very relevant and pertinent question. You know, here in Arizona, people of color tend to be incarcerated at higher rates and have longer sentences and terms. You throw into that, we are just north of our southern border. And so not only do we have a struggle between law enforcement, whether it's regular law enforcement, but also immigration enforcement. You know, there is a power dynamic there that has, and a lot of tension that has been going on for decades. So I think for me, the Black Lives Matter movement is so very important. It is important to us as a people in valuing human life and moving forward. And with that, our mayor spoke out early on, and our community had minimal compared to other communities, minimal protests, but there was definitely some protests in Tucson. Quite a few. There were a couple of visuals, a couple of big rallies. Very important. I think people, in my circle at least, are very much in favor of looking at criminal justice reform and are very willing to say Black Lives Matter and stand by that and craft and create the policies, that will cause change. So yes, and I've been reading up and looking at models in other cities that have used a hybrid model in integrating social services within their police departments. And I think it is a burden to put on our law enforcement officials to be the social worker, the psychiatrist, having to, in a split second, make a decision about what's necessary in a situation. And we've seen it up close and personal just in my own family, in that we had a neighbor who was living with mental health challenges. And oftentimes the first people called to the scene were law enforcement. And truly what was necessary was a medic. And so I can see how important it is to integrate our social services and workers into what goes on in public safety. And so I am all for looking at reform within our law enforcement units, and then looking at criminal justice and the higher rates of incarceration in Arizona for people of color, and looking at the sentencing and the length of sentencing here in our state.
Gotcha. And also this one particular thing, we got your views and your perspective on this particular topic, which is thanks for sharing your views. This one brings up another thing. I mean, Arizona and many other states too, the Second Amendment is a very important thing for many people. But at the same time, I'm sure we have seen, many gun violences. So how do you think, we can balance our safety and the freedom of the people, especially the Second Amendment? So what are your views? I know you mentioned in your campaign issues. This one is also another important topic for you. So what are your views and what are your perspective on the Second Amendment, and how do we save or keep our community safe?
Right. Oh, yes. Thank you for asking. So I'm not here to take anybody's guns away, but I am here to advocate for sensible gun safety laws. First and foremost, I would like to see, well, Arizona has some of the weakest, I don't even think we have any laws on the books in regards to gun safety. And so that's a starting point for Arizona. Here in Tucson, we've experienced our own mass shooting tragedy twice now. When I first moved to Tucson, a year after there was a shooting on the University of Arizona campus in the nursing department, and several nursing faculty were killed by a student who was very angry. He was disgruntled within the program, and one of my best friends was sitting 6 feet away from her professor who was shot and killed. But there were several students injured. And so that was when we first moved to Tucson, so that happened back in 2002. And then you fast forward to the incident with Gabrielle Giffords. And so we've experienced this in our community, and those are the big ones. That's not the day-to-day stories of people who have dealt and have been on the receiving end of gun violence. And so for me, I think universal background checks are necessary, and that is something that I would like to see Arizona put into place. And that does, not only does that put in universal background checks, but that also has the effect of closing what we call the gun show loophole. So in Arizona, people who aren't, this is not their main business, but who sell, under a certain number of guns can show up to a gun show and sell and not be required to conduct a background check on, and so that means any person could show up at a gun show and purchase a firearm without having a background check conducted. And so I would like to see universal background checks enacted in order to close this gun show loophole, so that it's not just a requirement for people that's their business and their livelihood. I think every person who wants to purchase a firearm should have to undergo a background check. There is another law on the books called the boyfriend law, and that's a intimate partner law. And here in Arizona, we have a law in the books, but it doesn't mirror federal legislation. And what we have here in Arizona is too narrowly defined, and so it's not comprehensive enough. And I would like to see us craft a policy that mirrors federal legislation, so then that's a little more comprehensive, and we see fewer and fewer deaths and violence due to intimate partner. And then last but not least, I think it would be great if we could enact some red flag laws, so that if there's concern that a person may be having a rough time and they may be at risk for self-harm or harm to others, family members can intervene without a court order. And it's for a minimal amount of time until a person stabilizes, and then we go on with our lives. So those are four things that I would like to see change here in Arizona in regards to sensible gun safety laws.
Very, very, very nice. So I'm switching the topic here from the social issues to the economy. I mean, as such, Arizona and even many other states, except few states where the economy was booming. Arizona was also doing good, no doubt about it, but it was not enough. For everybody to prosper or everybody to cash in, the economic boom which is happening. And we've been seeing that one too. Last 10, 15 years, we've seen that, no doubt economy has ups and downs, and it has it's been on the positive side for the last few years, except this after this pandemic kicked in, or before the pandemic kicked in. And the gaps gaps of people having money and people not having money has widened a lot, last 10, 15 years. So with these things in mind, people were talking about, all the politicians, whoever I've been talking to, they were talking about they were thinking of how to generate more high-paying jobs. So what do you think you would like to do for Arizona if you are elected? I know you're not the only one who will be able to, it's not your responsibility, if you get elected. You have to work with the whole team and the governor and the other side of the Senate too, to bring in some changes in the policy. So what would you like to see, to improve the, or attract the more businesses to the Arizona, where you can have more high-paying jobs?
Yes, no, and I think internally first, before we start trying to bring more in, which is always, that is always a plus for, the economy. I think, first of all, though, we need to look at at the revenue we're generating to begin with, and where our priorities are with that. You know, if we've learned anything with this pandemic, it is the everyday dollars that fuel our economy. And so, you know, we need to look at minimum wage. I think that needs to be an increase. And then our state gives away more every year in tax cuts and tax credits than we collect for our general revenue. And so I think there's something to be said about that. And then as far as helping get people to work, there are barriers and challenges where we need to invest our dollars to help people. And one is childcare. There is a shortage of quality, high quality, accredited, certified early childhood care places in our state, and the funding is not there. It is so out of reach for so many families that it's hard for people to go to work when they need to take care of their children. And so that's that I would start there first, looking internally, what can we do right now with what we have? And then from there, I think, you know, the tech sector is, you know, technology, I think, is a way to look at the economy. I think here in our state, if we started looking at sustainable renewable energy and, you know, redoing some of our systems, our infrastructure here in Arizona, that would create jobs. People working from home, you know, being able to telecommute. Those are some areas in which we can generate revenue with you know, very relatively easy and simple shifts. The other thing is job training. We know here in Arizona that we do not have enough qualified workers for the jobs that are available. There is a gap. And some of that goes back to education. And we can't ever seem to really get away from education. And I think moving workers from low-income jobs to high-income jobs requires training. And so there needs to be further investment in training. I think these are some of the things that will put our state on solid footing. It deals with our internal structures, and then we move outward to see what we can bring in and what we can attract. But there are things that need to be fixed internally, you know, as well as looking outward.
Very nice. I mean, you brought up the education. I know you're beginning also, you mentioned about the education, even now when talk about the jobs and the employment, we're talking the education. So what is that is missing in the education system in Arizona right now? What are the gaps you see? And so what do you want to work on?
Oh, yes. So, and we're on our way. We got some really great news yesterday in that there is a citizens initiative that has been cleared to be on the ballot to have a surcharge on a certain income level to raise taxes that will then be funneled back into our education funding, which is great. That, you know, and that is the big tension here in Arizona. A lot of people don't feel like our school system is being funded adequately. And it's not an investment. And there are other people who say, well, how much is going to be enough? Don't we give, you know, a certain percentage of our state, a greater percentage of our state income already goes to education. But here's the thing. We do not have enough resources to turn out the workers we need in our state to fill these jobs. And so I'm talking, you know, preschool on up through college, through the university system, funding has been cut drastically for education. And to me, there is no better way to invest in our future than to invest in our education system. Part of filling that job gap also is looking at our career technical education programs and our JTED programs. And that's nursing and engineering, your vocational trades, all of those. I'm trying to think. It's been almost a decade that funding for those programs has been cut, and we used to give a student 4 years to make it through a 3-year program, and the legislature cut that 4th year of funding, which means many of our students are not able to complete their career technical education when they are in high school. And the legislature has severed apprenticeship programs as well. So for your people going into the trades, there's not that opportunity there once was to complete training, get a certificate, as well as be a part of an apprenticeship program where you get hands-on but be mentored by certified workers. And so for me, I would like to see that 4th year of funding be restored. And with that, when our students complete their career technical education and they get those certificates, federal funding goes back into those programs. It's not even state dollars, but it's federal dollars. And I know specifically my school district loses several $1 million a year in federal funding because they're not able to get all their students completed. And you know, my middle child is in a program doing machine welding or precision machining, and that's part of a CTE program. He finished his 1st year as a freshman in high school. Well, this year he doesn't have the opportunity to be in the shop because we're learning from home. And so because he started in his freshman year, he'll still be able to complete his program once school goes back. But if he had started in his sophomore year or his junior year, there would not have been enough time. And many of our students don't find these classes until their sophomore, junior years. And then if there's any hiccups in their education, that decreases their ability to be able to complete. And so I'd like to see that 4th year of funding restored. I believe, and we noticed there's a correlation in the lack of, the numbers went down for students who were completing their programs. And so that's just a small example. I think with our universities, our community colleges were moved down to 0 funding from the state. The state does not give our community colleges any help in their funding, and state level funding has decreased for our universities while tuition rates began to increase. And so we are not making education available to the next generation. We are making it increasingly harder for our young people to find their niche, to pursue their course of study, to complete it, and then move into the workforce.
Sorry, I got you. I mean, you laid out the issues very well in the education system. But I mean, when you look at the fundamental education system, what I've been hearing is some school districts, they are doing well, and some school districts they don't do well. So why do you think, I mean, there is some disparity when the funding is initially the funding would be same for both the school districts? So why is it, I mean, some schools excel and some schools are not able to take advantage of those things? Any idea on that?
Oh, yes. Yeah, no, and you're very astute in looking at the inequities. And so what happens in Arizona, we do have an equalization formula that gives to each, that gets distributed, which creates a balance. Our school system is funded primarily upon property taxes. And so you have some areas, your high income areas, where your property taxes generate more. Well, that gets distributed equally among the school districts. So your school districts where you do not have high property taxes, there is compensation from your high income school districts. That gets distributed equally. But what our legislature has created, well, there's two things at play. First of all, your wealthier school districts are able to do extra for their school districts by passing bonds and overrides. Those will most certainly, those are citizen initiatives, and so those districts can raise and generate extra revenue for their school districts. Your lower income areas and districts are not able to ever get a bond or an override passed. And so that's one area that separates your school districts. And then the second is our state has enabled a system of tax credit giving. So if you're a single person, you can give up to $250 a year of a donation to your local school, and that gets credited back to you on your state taxes. If you are married, you can give up to $400 for your public schools. In your high income areas, that $400, that $250 is nothing. In your lower income school districts and neighborhoods and schools, that's a really tall ask for people to come up with that amount of money. And it may not seem like a lot, but for some families, it is a lot. And so that further increases the gap of how our schools are funded. And the schools that already have more than what they need in their budgets to have an incredible education system have the ability to collect even more. And our school districts that desperately need those extra funding dollars, the bonds and overrides and the tax credits are not viable avenues for revenue generating. And so my thought is, why don't we just fund the schools equally? Why don't we stop the tax credits and just put that money directly into our school budgets and allow the equalization formula to do what it needs to do for our schools across the board?
So, got you. Let's say, different aspect I learned today. I didn't know that, there's a bond. I read an article, but never clear first-hand information, did not get it. So, which is nice to know this particular way of raising funds to schools. Now, the another topic is the social topic regarding the education itself. So, what I've been talking to when I talking to the people, many people, and they say, I'm sure you know this one too. Yeah, you've been raising the kids of your own. Parents' involvement is another thing very important. In getting the kids education. So do you also see a difference of levels of the commitment from the different communities? Is also creating the gap in the development of the schools?
No, so my children have been very fortunate. And what I have learned, so I've been a substitute teacher within the district, so I've taught at a couple of the schools within our district, and our school district is the second largest in the state of Arizona. And what I know is that our teachers give so much to the students. And parents are involved as much as they can be, but you're looking at access to schools. So if a neighborhood school is closed and the main method of getting children to school is walking them to school because you do not have a car, that's a limiting factor. And that is a very real thing that happened within our own community 8 years ago, where several community neighborhood schools were closed because of funding and consolidated, and parents were no longer able to walk their children to school or to show up to the school in the evening times, and so I would say, from what I can tell, parents are very invested and very involved in the schools. It's just a lot harder if your school is not accessible to you by, by transportation. And then if you've got families, some families that are working 2-3 jobs just to put a roof over the head and food on the table and clothes on bodies, those parents are so stretched from time. And it's not that they don't care and they're not available. It's they're trying to make a living, And so, there are lots of external factors. But what I know and what I've seen is that by and large, parents are involved in their children's lives and are trying to do what they can. It's just when you have these other external pressures, it's hard.
Very nice. Thanks for all your views on this particular topic. Moving on to the other one, as the other social cause and also the nationwide issue, that is a healthcare issues. Healthcare costs are going up. Every year after year. And so, what is your view and your perspectives on this particular topic, please?
So this is another issue that really has caused me to run for office. It is very personal to my family as well. For the better part of 17 years that we have lived in Tucson, it has been a challenge to provide health care for my own family. And so we have done it all in this time. My children have been raised. We have gone without health insurance. We've been on the state health insurance plan. We've been on the children's health insurance plan. We've had private insurance. We've had employer-based insurance. We've done it all, and it has been one of the greatest challenges for me as a mom, trying to provide for my children and take care of them. And so, in Arizona, especially, there are things that we can do. I think most people believe that healthcare is a topic that needs to be solved at the federal level. There's more that we can do in the state. And actually, should I be elected into office, I already have a bill that I will be signing on to before even day one begins of the legislature. One of the things that I am passionate about and have worked very diligently on is children's health care. And we have a program here in Arizona called Kids Care. It is 90% funded by the federal government. It's our children's health insurance program. And it is premium-based, but a low-cost premium. Families within a certain income guideline have the opportunity to buy into the state's healthcare system. So if they make too much to qualify for our state health insurance program, they can buy into for their children if they qualify income-wise, and it's a small premium that they pay every month, but then their children get comprehensive healthcare. It is essentially, it's Medicaid expansion in a lot of ways. You're buying into the state Medicaid system, but you're paying a premium, and then the children are able to have access to really incredible health care. I think if we look at that model, so the bill I'm signing on will be to increase the income guidelines so that we can double the enrollment for our children's health insurance program here in the state of Arizona. I don't think we are woefully under-enrolled for our children. We have too many children in our state that have gone uninsured and don't have health insurance. So that's something I'm looking to jump on and help expand. But in that same vein, I think it's an incredible model to look at the general public, to look at health insurance for our adults, for adults who don't qualify for Medicare. So, and we give an opportunity to buy into the state Medicaid program. So if people want to keep their private insurance, they can. But if businesses and individuals want to buy into the state Medicaid program, I think we could do that and have premiums based upon income. So you've got a sliding scale for premium payments and charges based upon income. It's a little tricky because you run into, the private insurance industry and the relationship between private insurance and the hospital insurance. So, some of that needs to be untangled, looking at reimbursement rates, all of that. But I think I'm certainly willing to jump in, look at those things, start untangling the bits and pieces of it that are troubling and problematic, and push for something that would make health insurance so much more accessible and affordable to people in our state. And I think we can do it.
Let us hope for that. I mean, things will change, and it will be more affordable to the. I mean, it's, we have seen. I mean, last 22 years. I mean, things have been going up and up and up. I mean, I've seen anything in the other side. So let us hope and pray that something will change and the healthcare costs will go down. So another topic, especially the Arizona. I mean, when you talk about Arizona, we will not be able to complete the conversation without talking about the immigration. That's another hot topic of Arizona, because of being a border state with the Mexico. So, what are your views on immigration, and what do you think we should do?
Boy, that's a big one.
I know it's a federal topic, but I mean, it is nothing to do with the state. I mean, you cannot make any changes to that one. But I mean, just we want to hear your views on that.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And there is one thing that we can do, and that is to repeal a law that was put into place. That's SB 1070. That went nationwide when that was enacted, and that has enabled a lot of racial profiling to happen in the state of Arizona for people of color. And I think for me, I would like to see that law repealed, and that is something that I will be working on. But beyond that, it is unfortunate that there is such a fear-based narrative around immigration, especially as it relates to our southern border. Where I live used to be a part of Mexico, and there is such a rich diversity and history to this place of where I live, and it has become increasingly harder for people to move across the border. Now, we're more than willing to let goods move across the border as it matters to, economics. And yet we don't see the value in people being able to move freely across the border. I do think that, our borders need to be secure. I'm not opposed to that, but I think the mindset at which we come at immigration could change. I'm fortunate to live in a city that when there was a crisis for needing to help people who were coming across seeking asylum, our city, purely based upon volunteer efforts, rallied and rose to the challenge for the better part of a year of being able to help people who were coming into our country seeking asylum to find shelter and to get them to their final destination. And I belong to a faith organization that was a big part of providing hospitality. It's something that my church has long been involved in humanitarian efforts as it relates to the border, and was a part of the sanctuary movement way back when the sanctuary movement began. And so there's a very big part of that where we live. Now, mind you, not everybody feels that way. And we have also people in our city and in this region who push back strongly and have opposing views than mine. But where I'm rooted is in the value of human life and doing everything I can to remain kind and humane and react with compassion as necessary. And I do think that there is more that we can do, but you're absolutely right. A lot of it resides at the federal level. There's very little that we can do at the state. There are some things that we can do at the city level. And so as I can within my power, we'll work for a more humane approach to immigration.
So very nice. Another last topic of the day I would like to say is like the Arizona. When you talk about Arizona, another thing is to say during the summer it's very hot, and also the water resources are, even though you have a Colorado River going through the Grand Canyons, but still you have a real problem with the water because most of it is a desert area. So what is your stand or views on the environment policies and what would you like to do if you are elected to the office?
Right. Yes. No. Water is an issue. And honestly, I think living in the desert is a great place to live to study water. Um, and so we have.
I thought Michigan is the best place to study the water because we are surrounded with all the lakes here. But
Right.
that I'm in Arizona, yeah, go ahead, sorry.
No, it is. No, you're right. And most people don't think about that. But we have a funny relationship with water here in Arizona. A lot of people don't realize that we have a monsoon season in the summer. And so, this summer the monsoon rains have not come. It's been very dry, and that's always concerning when we don't have the water to replenish. But typically we get a great amount of water in a very short amount of time, and it's very interesting to see what that water does and how it flows when it comes down so fast that the ground can't absorb it. So there's all kinds of things to study, and we do have groundwater and then obviously water from the Grand Canyon, but we do not have consistent water regulations throughout the state. There are 5 management areas that the state has stricter regulations on and how they allocate water usage, but and those tend to be more in our metropolitan or more urban areas of the state, and then most of our state, which is pretty rural Arizona, the regulations are not as stringent. And so we're finding that our groundwater is being pumped at a rate that it cannot be replaced. And so you're very correct in asking about water. It is a concern. And, agriculture is a big part of the economy here in Arizona. We also have cattle ranching. And so there are very important uses for our water. But I think that we do need to see how we can put a more sustainable system in place so that it doesn't hurt the livelihood of families who have for generations, relied on water for their livelihood. But that being said, every person in this state deserves access to clean drinking water and water for their everyday lives. And so there is more that needs to be done. Some steps were taken last year to tighten up some of our water regulation, but I think more can be done. I am fortunate enough to be running with one of the leaders in the state when it comes to water. Representative Kirsten Engel, who is running for the Senate seat in my LD, is environmental professor at the U of A who has served 4 years in the House and now is running for the Senate seat. And I am excited to learn from her, to work with her, and to support, the bills that she puts forward. I certainly am taking a lot of my cues from her as well. So I feel very fortunate that I get to see it up close and personal, and am excited to work with her.
Very nice to hear about your knowledge, a little bit on the water side, and you also have another professor who is guiding you on this thing, and hopefully things will change in the Arizona area with the water. So is there any other topic which you would like to bring up? You would like to talk, which I missed at?
I think we've covered the gamut, and especially for the things that I'm interested in and where I am hoping to spend my time and energy. I'm impressed with your knowledge of our state. You've asked the questions that are certainly pertinent and relevant to what needs to happen in Arizona and what has been happening. So I appreciate the opportunity to be able to have this conversation this morning.
No problem. If anybody would like to be part of your campaign and we want to know more about you or your campaign, where they can look for and where they can how they can reach you. Yes.
The easiest way to reach me would be by visiting my website, which is Hamilton, my last name, Hamilton, house.com, and that's the number 4, Hamilton, number 4, house.com. there's links on my website to be able to volunteer if you'd like to volunteer. There's links if you would like to contribute to our fundraising efforts. I think we've got 75 days left until the general election, and so we are working hard to, get my name out there to help get me elected. And so you can learn more about me on my website. You can sign up to volunteer, and you can also make contributions there.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Stephanie Hamilton, coming on to the show and sharing your views and the perspectives. And we wish you all the best in your run. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Have a nice rest of the day. Thank you.
Yes, you too.